Hi everybody, welcome back to class. Today we're going to be getting ready to start into our physical science course, or the physical science topics. Before we get there though, we have to look at one little final piece called length. And now length it's the same length that you learned when you were in math class. It's a measurement of a distance. And when I'm talking about distance, I'm talking about from a point, how far it is from a point A to point B. You are used to measuring distances in English units, also called customary units. When I ask you to visualize feet, yards, pounds, gallons, all of those things, those are gallons and pounds are not for length, but they are customary units. You're used to visualizing feet. You measure your height in feet. When you visualize yards, you may think of a football field. You may think of a swimming pool. If you like to go to the rifle range, you may think of the distance it is to a target. Now again, pounds and gallons are not English units for length. Pounds is for weight and gallons is for volume. But they're just here to give you an example of what you're used to with customary units. We're focusing, though, this year on metric. Metric units are things like millimeters, centimeters, meters, and kilometers. Now, centimeters and meters you may be more familiar with depending on the math classes that you've had. Down below here, though, we can see a little example for these metric units of what they look like. For a millimeter, we're talking about the thickness of a credit card. That's not very big, so millimeters are very, very small. A centimeter, which is equal to 10 millimeters, is the metal portion of your eraser. It's that little tiny metal part. Depending on your pencil, it's going to be either gold or silver. It's not very much. It's still a very tiny distance. And when we're talking a ruler, remember, when you in a math class, one ruler equals 1 foot, which equals 12 inches. Well, that also equals about 30 centimeters. And we're focusing in on this. A meter, which is the traditional measurement system, which you will see a lot. A meter is the distance from the door handle to the floor. That's going to be your meter. The door handle to the floor, to give you a good representation. And a kilometer is, it says here what most major roads are measured in, and they're at least a kilometer long. It's still hard to visualize a kilometer. A kilometer is going to be just short of 3 laps around the track. Because each lap is 400 meters, a kilometer is 1,000 meters. So it's about 2.5 laps around a track. So 2.5 laps equals approximately 1 kilometer there. So that gives you an idea. When we're talking kilometers, think about like heights of mountains, real far distances. That would be like from Everett to Altoona type. That's where we're talking kilometers. So here are some examples of estimating length, and we're looking at metric units. These are the ones you're most unfamiliar with. When we talk of a Ferris wheel, when we're looking at the height of the Ferris wheel, 23 meters is going to be about the normal height, or the length from the ground to the top of the Ferris wheel. 30 centimeters is, again, that's about approximately 1 foot. That would be a really tiny Ferris wheel. 5 meters is real approximate to 15 feet. It could be a tiny Ferris wheel, but it's not those real big, tall Ferris wheels you think of. And then 50 kilometers, that's a really long distance. So it wouldn't be that. An adult horse, we're looking at 2 meters. 2 meters would be about the height or the length from the ground to the top of the horse's head. Again, 30 centimeters is approximately 1 foot. That would be a tiny horse. 90 centimeters is just short of 1 meter. So it's right around a yard, 1 yard. That's still too short. And 25 millimeters is about the thickness of somebody's wallet. That's a really tiny horse if you get one 25 millimeters tall. The last example is a key. When we're thinking about keys, if you would hold it up, traditional key, right around 5 centimeters would be about the right length of the key. If you had a key 2 meters long, you would never lose it, but it would never fit in your pocket. 15 centimeters again, you would probably never lose that key, but it would still be a little bit too big there to keep in your pocket. And the same with 150 centimeters. Remember, when we're talking centimeters, we're talking that little metal piece on the back of the pencil where the eraser is. When we're talking meters, we're talking from the floor to the door handle. So imagine if you had a key that was 2 of those. Now, your English units or your customary units are things you're familiar with. Inches, this is what you see most people think of, the distance from the tip of your finger to that joint. You can visualize how big a ruler is. A yard is about the same as a meter. It's about the distance from the door handle to the floor. And a mile would be 4 laps around the track. A mile would be 4 laps around the track. So that gives you an idea. Your traditional flash drive is going to be about 2 inches. They're not very big. A 6-inch flash drive is it's a huge flash drive. That would be a lot of storage. A ladybug is less than an inch. It's not very big at all. Maybe 1/4 inch, less than that. If you start seeing any ladybugs a foot tall, 3 yards, or 3 inches or 2 yards, run away from that ladybug as fast as possible because that's a huge ladybug. And then a refrigerator. A refrigerator is going to be about 6 feet tall. When you think about walking up to your refrigerator, seeing your parents walk up to your refrigerator, it's close in their height. It might be a little taller than them, depending on your parents. It might be a little shorter than them. But your refrigerator is going to be real close to their height. So 6 feet makes sense there because 4 yards would be a really tall refrigerator. That's a really tall refrigerator. That's about a 12-foot tall refrigerator there. So that helps you visualize the different units. Now we're looking at reading a metric ruler or a meter stick. With every meter stick and every metric ruler, what you're going to see are all these little tick marks here. Each one of those tick marks is 1 millimeter, so that's 1 millimeter. That would be 2 millimeter, 3 millimeter, 4 millimeter, 5 millimeter, all the way up. And then each of the big lines would be your centimeters. Every meter stick has 100 centimeters equals 1 meter. And there's actually also 1,000 millimeters in 1 meter. The hardest part that I see with 8th graders is reading this meter stick. And let's look at an example of what I'm talking about. I'm going to be changing a color here. We're going to go to orange. This red line here that we see, it's measured to be about 2.34 to 2.36 centimeters. And there's a reason there's a range. When we're looking at this meter stick, we are sure, that doesn't show up very well. We are sure that it went past the 2. That's why we have 2 in both of those. This here would be 0.1, 0.2, 0.3. The next measurement would be 0.4. I'm going to zoom in a little here. We know it went past a 0.3, so that's why you see the 0.3 in all those. Where we don't know is from here to here. We're unsure. What we get in between each of those marks, as it says right here, between each millimeter mark or 1/10 of a centimeter, you need to guesstimate because there's no marking to tell. And you have to make a good guess here. You're going to have to make a good guess. If it's closer to the 0.3, the number's going to be lower. If the closer to the 0.4, the number's going to be higher. So in this example, it looks real close to halfway, but it might be a little closer to the 0.3, some people might say. So we're going to say 2.34. You could have said it is halfway in there, so 2.35 centimeters would have been correct. You could say that it's a little closer to the 0.4, which then it would be 2.36 centimeters. You don't have to write all of these, and you don't have to write it where it has this range like this. You can just pick one of these, and it would have been correct. You get a little bit of playroom in that. And we're going to get some practice with it so you understand that a little bit more. So here's the examples that I'm talking about. When we're looking at this first example here, we know this measurement goes past the 2. We know there's 0.1, there's 0.2, there's 0.3. We know that the measurement goes past 0.2. So we get 2.2. Now we have to guesstimate. You could see here what the final answer is. But when you're zoomed out, it's a little bit harder to tell. But when you zoom in, it's a little bit easier. When we're looking, it looks to possibly be closer to the 0.3, but somebody might have said it would be halfway. So 2.25 centimeters, I would have accepted. If you say it's a little closer, I still think it's close to halfway. 2.26 centimeters. If you would have said, no, it's even closer to the 0.3. 2.27 centimeters. Now, I would not have accepted 2.8 or 2.9. When you're talking 2.8 or 2.9, we're talking a measurement that is right down over here. It's really close to the next one. So that's where you're looking at 2.8, 2.9. And this would have been about your 2.21 or 2.22, just so you understand where those would have been. But the correct answer here would have been 2.25 centimeters, 2.26 centimeters, and 2.27 centimeters. An important thing is you must have both the number and the unit. If you don't have the unit or the number, you will get it wrong. You need to have both of those to make a good measurement. Remember that, you need to have both. Let's look at the next one here. Again, we can see the answer is 0.54 to 0.56. We know this is 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5, 0.6. We know for sure it went past 0.5, so we're going to have 0.5 there. Now we have to guesstimate. When we zoom in again, it gets a little closer to see, but whenever you're using a meter stick, it's kind of hard to see. You might say that's closer to the 0.5, but it's still really close to halfway. So 0.54 centimeters would be a correct answer. You could say when we're zoomed out here, it looks pretty close to halfway. 0.55. Or you could have said it's a little closer to the other side, to the 0.6. 0.56. And again, we have 0.5 in all of these because it goes past the 0.5. We are guesstimating. We're guesstimating here at this second number. That's what we're guessing at. Now, I wrote it as 0.54. You could have wrote it as 0.54 centimeters, and that would have been correct. This 0 does not make it incorrect. I'm just not used to writing it. It's not how I learned it. If you put the 0 there, that would still be correct. If you have any questions on reading a meter stick, estimating length, or just understanding length in general, please feel free to email me, reach out to me. Thank you, everybody, and I hope you have a wonderful day.